Hi everybody, I'm Allie and welcome to Scrapbook and Cards today. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about using some stencils. So I just thought I'd gather a few of my fun stencils here and we'll talk a little bit about them. There's all different kinds on the market, from very cutesy to trendy to holidays to very open images to actual stencils that are very detailed, like this one here. Very simple compared to a stencil maybe like this, which is very graphic. Anything from snowflakes to stars to more falling snow, which is one of my favorites, and any different size that you can imagine, even up to 12 by 12s. And they even have some long ones. Today we're going to be using one of the Tim Holtz collection from Stampers Anonymous. We're going to be using the Zigzag. And I really like Tim Holtz's product because they're easy to store. So I have just a variety here, and I tend to use them with all kinds of mediums. This one I just happen to use with Copic markers and masked off, and then used my airbrush, so that's why it's still stained. So yeah, let's get started. So traditionally, when the average person thinks about a stencil, they think about using things like our distress ink and an ink blending tool and applying it through the stencil to your paper, or maybe an embossing paste. This one happens to be a metallic. There's clear ones, there's colored ones, there's glitter ones. All kinds of things come to mind when it comes to stencils. But we're going to think outside the box today, and we're going to actually use a product called Brusho. Let me introduce you to Brusho. This is a Brusho crystal color, and what it is a powdered version of watercolor. And they come in these multitude of colors, like this, in little teeny pots, just like this. So what I've done, because I only need a small amount at a time, is instead of actually taking off the band that opens up the little pot, I've pierced it with my paper piercer, and then I plugged it up with just a good old normal thumbtack. But on the top of my bottles are little colored swatches, so I know basically what color of Brusho I have in the pot. So what you get in your bottle is a very fine powder, but just like watercolor, the minute you add water into the equation, look at that. That color leaks into the water and colors your water. So that's why Brushos are kind of different. They're very granular. They give you a speckled effect initially, but you can take a brush or even your finger and mix them in and actually make them into more of your traditional watercolor medium. So let me show you a little bit more on those. So this is my Brusho chart, and I have swatched every single color that I have. I'm only missing a few, and each rectangle contains the name of the color, and then it also contains both a blended side and a more crystallized side of what would come out of that bottle initially. So once you blend all those crystals together, you get a much smoother product, a more traditional watercolor look. But that's where the Brusho crystals are very cool, because they're made up of different crystals, just like the emerald green. This is one of my favorite ones. It has some yellow crystals and some blue crystals, so when they're combined, they get this shade of green. Whereas the sea green has a little bit more blue to it, and so on and so forth, depending on what color you want as an end result. So let's go and use these and some water with our stencils. Let's go and experiment. So I have a piece of Canson 90-pound watercolor paper, and I've put a little tiny bit of adhesive on the back just to keep all the edges down, because obviously when you add water paper it buckles. That's all right, no big deal. All right, so I have chosen some gamboge and some brilliant red as far as our colors for our Brusho. So I'm going to just take the color swatch lids off the top of those and have those ready. I have my spray bottle of just good old tap water, and I'm literally just going to lay our stencil right over top. And first of all, I'm actually going to wet my paper down. So just being fairly generous. As you can tell, I didn't wash my stencil off. I did a little bit of experimenting first. So we're going to start with the brilliant red first. And of course, the more crystal you put on, the more color, more vibrant you're going to be. And see how it comes off in just little powdery speckles. And then we're going to come in with a secondary color here, our gamboge. And I'm going to try and hit it where I don't have a lot of that red, and then a few spots where they're going to commingle, right? Now, of course, you can take it off at this point. It would be very speckly and cool, but I'm going to add a little bit more water just to make things move around within that stencil. So what it does is it just pushes that color around a little bit more within those gaps. Now, we have so much color sitting on top of the stencil that we're going to bring in a secondary piece of paper here. And I'm going to hopefully set this down beside. And I'm going to take this very carefully, and I'm going to turn it over, because I'm going to use the dye that's still left on my stencil, and I'm going to apply it to the surface of my secondary piece of cardstock. If you let this dry, it'll be very, very vivid. The color is so rich in these pigments. I mean, this is going to last you years and years and years. So if you want to invest in a really nice watercolor product, this is the way to go. To soften my color, I'm going to just take a piece of paper towel here, lightly pat it to absorb the excess water, and pull it up. And look, it just softens everything. And if you want it even softer, you can go in again with your paper towel. Now I'm also going to take my paper towel and take off the excess off the back here, hoping not to transfer it. So here's number 1 version, and then there's your secondary version. So you get the complete opposite to whatever your stencil is. So depending on the amount of negative and positive space, you could have so many cool things. And plus, there's still ink on here. If I took this, sprayed it down a little bit more with water, and added it to another piece of watercolor paper, I have a third piece of art to take to my cards. So now that we've made our backgrounds, I'm going to take it and make a card out of it. I'll be back to share that with you in a moment.